Your ability to utilize visual design principles in your instruction can make or break your career as an instructional designer. Which is why in this video, I'll show you how you can use knowledge of visual design to stand out in the market and design more effective and impactful learning experiences. Hi, I'm Nicole Stephens. I'm an instructional design consultant and a member of the Devlin Peck team. I've seen the difference that visual design skills can make in landing a job and designing effective learning experiences that really connect with your audience. Which is why today I'm going to show you 3 visual design concepts that you can apply to your next instructional design project. And you don't have to be an experienced graphic designer to do it. The first concept that I want to share with you is visual segmentation. Now, segmenting is a common practice used by both teachers and instructional designers alike. Essentially, what it refers to is taking large amounts of information and breaking it up into smaller, more manageable chunks. This is where it gets its more common name of chunking. And chunking is a great way to make learning more manageable and easier to understand. But here's the thing. All too often, people focus on chunking their content, and they don't consider their visuals along with that. And when you make your visuals an afterthought, they can come across as, well, an afterthought, which is not what we want, right? Remember, visuals are a key part of communication, especially when it comes to learning. If you overload your learners with too much information at once, they can become overwhelmed and disengaged. On the flip side, if you don't give them enough to work with, they can become confused or frustrated by your learning experience. So when you're planning out your storyboards or your prototypes, don't forget to factor in visual segmentation. You don't have to have all the visuals figured out just yet, but it's important to think through how you're going to communicate with your learners visually. With a little planning and some thoughtful chunking, you'll be well on your way to creating engaging and effective content. Let's take a look at some examples from people I currently have the pleasure of working with in the Bootcamp. You'll see how they've applied visual segmenting to their projects and what a difference it has made. This example is from Bootcamper Mary Schiff. In this example, Mary is doing a couple of things. She is introducing this mentor character in her story, and she's trying to show the learner the experience that this character has. And in addition, she's also trying to show that she's trying to tell the learner how she can access this character at other points in the learning experience. And they can do that by selecting these goggles. So if you're looking at this from a storyboard, the instructional design of this, the writing is very good. But we've got a couple of things going on here. We have a lot of information, one, about our mentor that's being thrown at us all at once. And we also are kind of torn between, do I read what's in the box here, or do I do something down here with these goggles? So let's look at how Mary took this and used visual segmenting to help fix these couple of issues with this layout. So here's the after. And in this case, we're seeing there's a lot less text for one. And what she did is she divided this up into a few different screens and introduced this content over about 3 screens as opposed to 1 screen. So now, and she also took the goggles off, and she's waiting, and she's going to introduce those at the end. So now the learner is no longer having to compete for where do they look next, and it's less of a cognitive load for them to read what's in here. It's a shorter amount of text to read. It's larger text. It's more engaging and appealing to that learner. They're not overwhelmed with so much information. We get to the end of our mentor introducing, and she says, if you need my help, you can select the goggles. Try selecting them now. So not only have we reduced the amount of information that's on the screen at one time, but now we're being very purposeful in telling the user what to do next. And not only that, but the goggles down here are now, she's added this blue bar across the bottom. So the goggles have a set place that they're going to be throughout the learning experience, so the user can start to understand and expect that this is where they're going to go to find additional information. So this puts the two side by side, and you can see, here's who it was before, lots of text, small text, and conflict in what to look at first. The finished screen, much different. The use of visuals like informational icons is a great way to control the flow of information. It also puts the user in control of their learning experience by allowing them to pull information if and when they need it. Ben Maddox is a boot camper that has done a wonderful job of using visual segmentation in his project. His project has a lot of content that he has to figure out what to do with. He has developed a learning application where people can go in and select options and basically create a birth plan for what type of experience they want to have during labor and delivery. And there's a lot of information that needs to be explained as part of that for people to understand what choices that they're making. And I'm just showing you one screen here. There's a lot of other screens that's part of this learning experience. So what he has done is he's used these informational icons to allow the user to select. If they don't know what some of these things are, he's allowed them to select to get more information. If they do know what they are, or they're not interested in what they are, then they have the option to move past that. And so here's an example of how, if a user selects music, for example, then they've pulled this information and he's segmented this information in a way that then they can get more information about what type, how to use music in the labor and delivery room. And he's, created some graphics, stylings, and all these things around this modal window. So a very nice way to segment visually the information without having to show it all on the screen at once. And so he did a very nice job. Ben's learning experience also illustrates the next concept that I want to discuss today, and that is visual hierarchy. Have you ever looked at a screen and had no idea where to focus your attention? It can be a frustrating experience, and it's usually because the visual hierarchy is all out of whack. But don't worry, there's a way to fix it. You need to tame the chaos by giving your layout a visual hierarchy. Visual hierarchy is a way to convey importance to your audience, as well as guide their focus. There's several ways to achieve visual hierarchy. Let's return back to Ben Maddox's project and look and see how he tackled this. Ben has done an excellent job of using visual hierarchy in his project. There's a lot of information on this screen, but Ben has contained this information and organized it in such a way that it can make sense to the user without feeling overwhelming. And he's done that in a number of ways. The first thing he's done is he's created this progress bar across the top of the screen. So it's the very first thing that users see. So in the viewing order, we start at the top typically, and we work from the top to the bottom in a left and right order. So from a hierarchy standpoint, we've got this at the very top, and we can kind of understand that anything within this content area in the white part of the screen applies to, in this case, the review and submit screen. So we're on our final screen, and we can see that through this progress bar. So then looking at the content itself, we're going to work our way down the screen, and we can see that Ben has further organized the information in a couple of different ways. One, he's created these 3 different sections and grouped the information within these green boxes. And we can understand that everything within this content of this box, for example, is related to newborn care. He's also used visual hierarchy within these groups themselves. So you can see that he's used this heading here for newborn care, and he's made it at the very top of the group. And he's also made it stand out and look a little bit different. It's larger than the text below it, giving it a little bit more importance, saying everything falls under this heading. And then he has also used some headings within that to kind of help group the options under each little subheading here. So this is a good example of how these headings, by making them visually distinctive, help give hierarchy to this page and help the user understand where to look and what relationship the data on the screen has to one another. And that is because this page has strong organization and visual hierarchy. I want to back up for a second and show an earlier iteration of Ben's project compared to his final iteration. And I do want to make a point of noting that this is a natural process for everyone working through a project of this nature. Where you start in the project is never, or very rarely, where you actually end up. And so that's a very normal part of this experience. But where Ben started, let's look at where his project was before he employed visual hierarchy. So we are in the labor preferences section here. So everything underneath this is related to our labor preferences. If we go over to the left in this first iteration, we can see we're also in labor preferences. We still have a lot of the same choices that we have over here, but when we hit continue here, we really don't know how many screens that we have to get through. We're not sure how long, how many categories, how long do we have to go till we get to the end. And so it can be fatiguing to the learner to not have any frame of reference, to know, how far they've come or how far they still have to go within their learning experience. So we can use visual segmenting and visual hierarchy to kind of help guide the user through that experience. And so you can see where Ben's iteration, from his first iteration to his last, where he's employed these visual design concepts, has made quite a different impact on the user experience. The final visual design concept I want to share with you today is visual contrast. Visual contrast is a very powerful tool or a technique that you can use to make your content stand out. So what is contrast? At its basic definition, contrast is any degree of difference between two elements. Most people, when they think of visual contrast in e-learning, they think of using that through color. And that can be a very effective contrasting technique. But there are many ways that you can use contrast. You can use it with text elements on the screen. You can use it with sizing of objects on the screen. So for example, if you have one very large object next to a smaller object, the contrast between those is going to help draw focus for the user towards maybe the larger object on the screen. So that can be used to draw users' attention. And you can even show contrast between ideas. Contrast is important because it helps establish a sense of hierarchy in your designs. Without it, everything would blend together and nothing would stand out. So if you're trying to draw attention to a certain object in your e-learning, then experiment with visual contrast. It can be a game changer, and it can really focus your learners in on what you want them to see in that right moment. And the best part is you don't have to be a graphic designer to use contrast effectively. Let's take a look at how some of our boot campers use contrast in their designs. This example is from a project by Lucy Aguilar. Here, Lucy has created a scenario-based learning experience, and she has shared with us an example of one of her question screens. So she's asking the audience to make a choice, and she's used visual contrast to pair the text-based part of the choice with the graphic that supports that. It's a very good use of a contrast of two different types of media that work together to form a bigger picture for the audience, or a more clear picture of the audience of what's going on in the situation that they're having to make a choice around. Now, Lucy already uses contrast here between these two types of elements, but in her second iteration, Lucy takes this subject of contrast a little bit further. So in this version of Lucy's screen, Lucy has used a lighter background so that the question choices stand out a bit more. So she's using some color contrast here. And she's made her question choices black, or her pictures on her question choices black and white, as opposed to full color. And the reason that she did that was when you hover over one of these question choices, it goes to full color. So she brought the color into the action, so to speak. So when the user engages with one of these question choices, we're going to see that contrast of that full color image appear. So it helps the user understand that that is the choice that they have currently selected. And it also draws the user's focus to this picture and what's going on in that picture. So again, it brings the user into an area of focus, and it makes them think about this choice in a little bit more connected way. So all of this is through the use of contrast. So I want to compare the two. Lucy's first iteration, which again was very good and still had excellent use of contrast in order to bring this to the user. But then she iterated on that even more and was able to further focus in the user. So that before and after is a very powerful shot, I believe. I think it shows great iteration and how contrast was used effectively in Lucy's project. This final example is from Bootcamper Nan Wang. And Nan does a wonderful job of using color contrast in her learning experience to really help with her storytelling and moving her story forward and letting color help guide the focus for her learners of where she wants them to look on the screen, as well as kind of conveying the mood of her characters at the same time along with that through the use of color. So in this example, this character is known as, there's no name. It's just this angry voice from the crowd. Something happens, something is said, and our character goes from this kind of sea of people that you can see in the background to this silhouette image, but your attention is drawn. It's jarring. It's drawn to the fact that, oh, there's a character here. But the fact that that Nan used kind of a silhouette version of this character, we're not zeroing in on the specifics of the character yet, like the facial features or any of those elements. We're sort of forced to pay attention to what's in the text box first, which is exactly what Nan wants us to be focused on. So the use of color has helped direct us into what we should be seeing. Once we have accomplished that, then this character then gets a name and has a voice, has a face. We're drawn to the facial features through the use of this color. We still have text here, but it's definitely helping tell this story like, oh, now you're more invested. You had to stop and pay attention before, and now you're more invested in this character because of that color contrast. That really helped to tell this story. Another way that Nan uses this concept of color in her story is just through the contrast between this light colored background. So she has a lot going on in this background. There's a lot of elements, calendar, plant, desk, different things. But she's dimmed that out so that there's still elements there and there's visual interest, but the user's eye is drawn to what has full color, and it's front and center in the screen. So immediately we go up here and we look at what is within this communication. And then we read below to see a little bit more about that. So simple technique, but through the use of just that color contrast, we can see how the user's eye is drawn to where the designer, Nan in this case, wants us to be focusing on. Color contrast has so many helpful applications. Have you ever watched a movie that has flashback scenes to a previous time period? If you'll notice, a lot of times they'll use a color effect on those flashback scenes as an overlay to indicate to the viewers where they are in the movie timeline. So as you jump back and forth, you can visually tell if you're in a flashback scene or a current scene. This is a very effective use of color in order to provide that contrast between the two time periods. And the same effect can be used in e-learning. In fact, we use this technique in the Instructional Design Project Lab course that we're creating in the Bootcamp. This course has two unique modes of instruction, a simulation mode and an instruction mode. So we've used two contrasting colored backgrounds to indicate to the learner which mode that they're in at any given point in time. It's a very simple technique, but it's very effective for the learner. It helps them to not have to stop and think about which mode that they're in, and we can get right to the content and direct their attention to where it needs to be. So there you have it. Visual segmenting, hierarchy, and contrast are all very powerful techniques that can be used to enhance and improve learning design. By using these techniques, you help learners to easily navigate through their content and focus on the most important information. When we combine visual design with instructional design, we create a learning experience that communicates and connects with our audience and supports our learning objectives. Think about how you can use these visual design concepts to enhance your next instructional design project. I'd like to give special thanks to Mary Schiff, Ben Maddox, Lucy Aguilar, and Nan Wang for letting me showcase their work in this video. These developers are listed under the video with links to their portfolios if they are completed. Some of them are still in the process of developing their portfolios at the time of this recording. So we will be updating their portfolios as they get completed. But in the meantime, you can also connect with them on LinkedIn through the links below. Now that you've seen examples in action, what do you think? Do instructional designers need visual design skills? If you agree and want to enhance your visual design skills, check out the link to our bootcamp in the description below. As a bootcamper, you'll get to work directly with me and other members of the Devlin Peck team to enhance your visual design skills as part of your instructional design skill building. This will help you to enhance your skills and land more remote opportunities. Let's hear what Lucy Aguilar has to say about this part of the bootcamp experience.
Hi, my name is Lucy Aguilar, and I want to talk about my experience at the bootcamp. After writing my storyboard, I was given the green light to start working on visuals. When I first started the design process, I was confident because I had been making my own slide decks for years. But then, when I started working with Nicole, I quickly realized that there was a lot more to learn. There were things like proper alignment, padding, and color usage that I had never even considered before. To be honest, I was a little intimidated at first because Nicole's work was so impressive. I had seen her portfolio so many times that it was hard to believe that I was actually working with her. But Nicole was really helpful, and she answered all my questions with constructive feedback, and she made me feel comfortable right away. If you are starting on the design process, I recommend you approaching it with an open mind. Your first attempt might not be the final version. That's totally normal. Some slides might need multiple iterations, and that's where Nicole and the Bootcamp pros can really come in handy. Nicole is always available to guide you through the process, and she even provides helpful personalized videos to explain to you better what's going on. I highly recommend you seeking out her feedback. Nicole is the best.
Thanks, Lucy. I love working with people in the bootcamp and helping them refine their instructional design skills, improve their projects, and seeing them go on to land the remote opportunities in instructional design that they're looking for. I would love to work with you to help you strengthen your instructional and visual design skills as well. You can learn more by going to idbootcamp.com. And of course, if you liked this content, don't forget to like and subscribe below to see more like this. Catch you next time. Bye.